Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Precision Optics. Omer and his team are the ones to trust when it comes to mountain hunting gear, guns, and optics. Precision Optics is a major supporter of conservation, and we are proud to partner with them. Head over to precisionoptics.net and tell them that Spike Camp sent you.
All right, everybody, welcome to tonight's episode of Camp Chat. Just a couple things. A reminder that we're running a predator hunting picture and story contest until the end of March. I haven't seen a ton of pictures of predators yet or stories, but I suspect this cold snap that we've got throughout the interior and a little more snow is going to get some action there. So make sure you share what you're up to and get out there and help those ungulates. Also just want to remind everybody about the member rewards prize for February. This time around, we have another backpack. This one is from Eberly Stock, and it's their Just One backpack. It's a big pack. I can't remember the size, but I think it's like 6,500. Eberly Stock, if you've ever owned one, they make really solid stuff. It's bomb-proof, and this one is no different. So one more big thing I want to touch on before we get going in our interview tonight. April 1st will mark the 2-year anniversary of Spike Camp. And I just have to say that Blake and I, both of us have been absolutely blown away by the support that the hunting and the conservation community together have given us and shown us. And to celebrate that, we partnered up with Bosveld Jacobs Safaris to give away a 10-day fully guided hunt for 2 in South Africa. And this package will include your hunting licenses, the taxes, airport transfers, lodging, meals, drinks, daily laundry service, trackers, skinners, trophy prep, and of course, a professional hunter to take you out every day. And it includes 2 animals each, so you each get an impala and a wildebeest. And then from there, you can select off the very extensive menu if you want to save a little money and pick a few other animals, which is what I did. We're also going to give away some more cool prizes throughout the contest, allowing for some bonus entries along the way. And we're going to draw the winner of this contest, of this hunt, on April 7th, 2025. And just a little side note, I'm going to be going to Bosveld again a second time in 2026. So we'll have to talk to Rian Jacobs and the prize winner and see, but there is a chance that you could hunt with me if we're both there at the same time. And all you have to do for this contest is just be a Spike Camp member or refer somebody to be a member. And so it's a real simple one. We're not making you work that hard. This is our way of saying thanks. I get asked a lot about a couple things. One, how are we able to give away all these cool prizes that we do every month? And secondly, why do we do it? Well, it's pretty simple. Both answers are pretty simple. First of all, the members of Spike Camp are the lifeblood of Spike Camp. Without you guys, we're nothing. We don't have a community. Your engagement and your referrals to the platform to bring other folks on are extremely important to us. And the more members we have, the louder our voice is as a community. And that helps draw attention to the platform. And then from there, Spike Camp, it's our job to draw attention to conservation and to hunting. And together with the members, we grow the community. And companies in the hunting space, they see this and they want to be part of it. It's really a cool cycle to be part of. And we want to thank all of you for supporting us along the way. So I'm working every day. I'm going to trade shows whenever I can. I was just down in Reno. I'm going to Salt Lake next week for the Hunting Expo. And then, of course, we'll be at Penticton at the show there, and I'm trying to seal partnerships with all kinds of different brands to just keep this momentum up and keep getting cool products and building the brand. So anyway, lots of cool stuff coming this year. So thanks again, and enough of that stuff. Now it's time to chat with our buddy here. So I've been trying to get together with this guest for a while now. Blake and I met Jess Baxter on a Riverjet charter boat, heading out for sheep opener. I want to say it was 22. Is that right, Jess? It sounds about right.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, 22. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a long jet boat ride. We were 7 hours each way, so we had lots of time to chat and get to know each other. And since then, we've been on the same boat a couple times, and we've stayed connected. And Jess was one of the first guys that I reached out to when we started Spike Camp, and he's been a big supporter of the platform. And I just want to thank you for that, my friend, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'll admit, when I got the note asking me to be on, I was like, oh God, I'm just a simple guy. But I appreciate this very, very much. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't call you a simple guy. There's a lot more to Jess Baxter, and we're gonna unpack that tonight. So maybe first of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about your personal background, where you grew up, all that fun stuff.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm now a 42-year-old dude. I live in Steveston, British Columbia. Really got into hunting later on in life. So we'll dive through all that stuff. But I guess like 2018, 2019, I eventually got out on my first trip. But yeah, primarily I was born and raised in the Lower Mainland, and I just instantly fallen in love with the outdoors and that aspect of life. And it's, in short, changed my life. So that's the easiest way to explain. I sell real estate now. People still look at me going, oh my God, I can't believe you dive into the belly of a deer and take out its guts, when I can't even look at my own blood. But it's been an interesting transition, and to see people in my world say that, how do you do that? It's been pretty shocking.
Oh, for sure. Now, your family, like your folks, your family background, there wasn't any real hunters in there at all, was there?
No, Chuck. No. It really had nothing to do with my family at all. My old man, blue collar worker, great guy, didn't get me into hunting, but he did get me into the outdoors. So we grew up driving from here through Alberta, northern British Columbia, and getting out camping and doing those sorts of things. The type of family where they give you a knife when you're 5, and his only instructions is don't cut your finger off. And that's kind of my start into the outdoors, but spending time with family that way was awesome.
And your siblings, none of them hunted either, right?
No. They still look at me kind of funny, going, "How do you do this?" They get more of it now, but no family members at all. Yeah.
Okay, so basically a city boy with a hidden passion, or I guess an unpacked passion for the outdoors. How did you get to hunting? How did you discover it?
I hope this comes off as a great story. It's memorable to me, but my friend Rich, some people here will know him, some won't, but Rich asked me, it was either late 2018 or early 2019, like just around Christmas time in 2018. He asked me if I ever wanted to go on a sheep hunting trip. And at that time, I had no idea what that was about. None. He explained to me that he really had nobody to go with. Rich is one of my best friends. He looked at me, figured I had a heartbeat and a couple legs, and would keep him alive wherever we were to go. So I agreed. I said, sure, sounds great. And I've learned to say yes to a lot of things from that day forward. But I didn't have my PAL, I didn't have my core, I had nothing like that, and didn't even know what to expect. But I eventually said yes, and started the process of getting my firearms license and getting my core, and learning about tags and animals and all these things. And from that time forward, it just got me to where we went on our first trip, which was a sheep opener. So zero experience. I barely outdoors equipment. I had some camping equipment, and we figured it out. So that was my entry into hunting. Was just simply one of my best friends asked me to go on a trip, and I said yes.
Yeah, that's a cool story. So, was Rich at that point? He obviously been in the hunting game for a while. Was he born and raised into it, or what was his story?
Another kind of not born and raised into it, but as a late teenager, let's say, he got into hunting with one of his friends, with really nobody around him and nobody to tell him what to do and where to go and how to do things. So him and his friend Matt just decided to start hunting, and that turned into deer trips and turned into all sorts of trips. But I remember, I'm sure he's going to correct me on this, but his first deer trip was him out. Um, Driving around. It was truck hunting. They found a deer and they harvested the deer, shot the deer, and it was down the
Hmm.
hill. And they said, "Well, now what the hell do we do?" And I remember him telling me a story about him trying to take this deer out, tied to a tree, and like hike it out of the bush. And when you have no idea, you don't know what to do. So they started that way, and he, through the years, harvested a lot of animals, largely truck hunting, and just found a passion, and he grew into another group of friends who got him into other types of trips, and in turn got me into it. But he started with no information. They just went out there and did it. Some of the stories that he'll share with you, they were in -40 at Big Bar and sleeping in a
Hmm.
tent trailer, people saying, "What are you doing? It's crazy, you're going to die out here." But those guys at that time would drink a case of Crown Royal or a case of Canadian Club and go to the bar every night and then go do it again the next day. So that was
Yeah,
their entry into hunting.
yeah. In a lot of cases in those cold weather hunts, that's the antifreeze that keeps you alive.
Yeah, well, just
In my
especially being a
younger
younger
days, it
guy.
was the same. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As a younger guy, and you know you can to do that, you can still drink two cases or a case of whiskey between 4 or 5 guys at work, but now not so much.
Well, that's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about that first hunt, because I mean, most people will start with black bear, or mule deer, and then there's Jess like sheep hunt. Yeah, sure. Let me look up what a sheep is, and I'm in.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
How did that
It's
go?
well, I enjoy telling that story because I didn't know what it meant at the time, but you tell people afterwards and like, your first trip was a sheep hunt, and it absolutely was. But we decided we were going to go off some intel that one of Rich's friends shared with him, and it was around Toad River. And I'm probably going to say some names of some places, and I apologize in advance, but I
Okay.
realize some of the information is secretive, um, and I truly do appreciate that. But you still have to go out and do it. So if
Yeah.
anybody wants to get
Oh
out
yeah.
and do these things, fill your boots. It's worth trying. But we decided to go to Toad River. And again, I hadn't been really much past Prince George other than my family, but we ended up planning the entire year from 2019 January to sheep opener. And again, I didn't even know what an opener was, but it was for sheep. You got to get a sheep gag. So we decided to do that. So we drove all the way up to Fort Nelson. We ended up driving a bit further and did Toad River in one full day, which is a long drive.
Yep.
And we got there, I think, on the 28th of July, and we got in with still a few hours of light left. So we ended up going to check out these places that we were supposed to go check out: this road, this creek, that road, that creek. And we did that and said, "Oh, this is great." And got out and saw my first porcupine in the wild. I thought that was kind of cool, and that sticks with me. And then I didn't even know we had porcupines at that point. But found a couple spots where we thought we could go into, and it turned into us going back to the Toad River Lodge because we had booked 2 nights there, and that was our plan to suss out the first night, go through the next day, and just make sure we knew where we were going. So we got up the next morning and drove out to the first spot we thought we were going to go, and we ended up coming to a river, and the river was safe enough for us to drive our truck through. And for those who know Rich, and some of you won't, but he'll literally drive his truck through anything, and if it's not top speed, it's not done right. So we ended up getting through that first creek all the way to the other side, and drove up that road. And there was another one, which is the Racing River. So we got through McDonald and got to the Racing River. In the Racing River, there was already a truck on the other side. We're like, "Oh, that's cool." Somebody already drove through it. Wasn't that deep. We figured, okay, we'll go back here tomorrow morning. We'll hike into this particular spot. We'll wade across the river, which is the Racing River, and up that way. And got back to the Toad River Lodge, ran into a few other hunters. What I found so shocking is some of the guys were quite a bit older, and I thought seasoned guys. That'll come into the story later. But yeah, it turned into us going out the next morning, running into another group of guys. They're from Cranbrook. So we both parked on one side of the river. The water levels rose, and we're like, holy gosh, like, I don't know if we're going to get through this. So we came up with a plan, said, well, let's just all go in the same truck. You guys are going that way. We're going to go this way. So let's just get across the river. Hammered it across the river and got to the racing river. They were going to go up one way. We were going out the other. Like, okay, see you guys later. And it turned into us gearing down and trying to wade across this now significantly deeper river. Got into our dinch and put our backpacks on and took 5-10 steps into the river, and it was not possible to get across. And these guys are looking at us. These guys were seasoned hunters looking at us going, what the hell are these guys doing? They're going to die in there. And sure enough, we turned around and we didn't die, and we stopped, put our clothes back on, reconvened and said, I guess we'll find a spot up the river where we can go and get across this river, because they were going up this way. We didn't want to go that way. So we ended up hiking about 7 or 8K up that river, trying to find a spot to cross. Couldn't. There was just no space anywhere. It was just too deep, and I couldn't believe the amount of water that came up in that particular amount of time. I was shocked, realizing that the trucks across the river, the other truck that we saw the last day, I'm like, there's no way they're getting out of there. But I realized now water goes up and down quite rapid. But we hiked all the way up, couldn't find a spot, reconvened again, said, oh my gosh, what the hell are we going to do? We're haggard by this point. Keep in mind, there's no trail. And for those who have been up there, they understand what trails are. But as a new guy, trails, why would there be a trail in the middle of nowhere? So we hiked all the way back to where they dropped us off. And we said, fuck it, we're just going to go out the same way they did. And we started doing that. We started hiking up the same way. They had an ATV. We saw where the ATV was, and that's where the trail ended. And we just figured, go up the mountain and we'll see where we can get to.
Mm-hmm.
We ran out of water pretty quickly. And again, not knowing that you should probably pack water, we started getting pretty dire for water. We literally had none left at this point. We'd been hiking for hours. Now we're 8K up the racing, 8K back, and now we're about 7K up the McDonald. Going, oh my God, we're gonna need some water. So by the time night came, we could hear water down here. It was about 100 feet down below or 50 feet down below a rocky cliff, and eventually got to a spot where we get some water and set up camp for that night and said, we're just gonna figure it out. Let's see how this goes. So we grabbed as much water as we could, hiked back up, and set up our tent and tried to eat a bite of dinner. And I no word of a lie, I could not eat a single bite of that food. And I hadn't eaten throughout the day. I hadn't drank much water, and I realized now I was really, really dehydrated, and I was not in a good spot. So I didn't know that. Just I'm an eater, I can eat.
So, Jess, do you think part of that was nerves too? Like you were scared maybe, and like just out of your comfort zone? Do you think that might have added to it?
Of course, Chuck. I think the comfort zone part, yes. Was I ever really scared? I don't think so. I don't think scared is the right word, because I didn't know what I didn't know at that point. We were just hiking in the woods.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen any wildlife other than a porcupine and a couple of sheep on the highway through Stone Mountain Park. So I didn't know what to be afraid of at that point. I know it sounds shocking, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So we shut her down. I didn't have a bite. He ate his whole meal, and then we ended up trying to fall asleep, and we passed out pretty quickly. A few hours later, it's pitch black out, and I started cramping. And I hadn't realized how bad leg cramps can get until you actually have one. But we share a tent. So we've got a Hilleberg tent. We're sharing this thing, and we're lying side by side, head to toe. And we're both nearly dying, legs cramping straight up and straight back. And there's nothing you could do. So I slammed a bit of water and tried to get over it, and fell back asleep for a bit. But after that, we're both just screaming in agony at some points through the night, going, oh gosh, this is brutal. And for those who have experienced that, I invite you to try to do it without electrolytes. It'll get you.
Oh yeah.
But it's brutal. Yeah. So it's really terrible. Woke up the next day after not sleeping a whole well, and started hiking up the same valley. No trail, nothing, just up a moss-covered hill, and it's steep, and there's blowdown in a few spots. Couldn't really see alpine at this point, and again, I didn't know what alpine was, but couldn't see anything other than trees, and we're just hiking out. We finished that day, a full day of hiking, maybe going 6 or 7K straight uphill, and we both looked at each other and we said, holy shit, like, how do people do this? And I remember having that conversation so many times. And admittedly, we went to bed that night, woke up the next day, and took, I don't know, 10 minutes worth of uphill still, and we turned around and we actually went all the way back, all the way back to where our truck was in front of the McDonald's. And we said, we're going to try the other area. This is crazy. So we drove around that day and ended up going across the highway. And I don't think you can get in there now, but there's a microwave tower up there and all sorts of cool things back there. But drove in there and realized, okay, we're going to set up the next day. We're going to go in that spot. And we got another night at the Toad River Lodge. They appreciated our business and bought a bunch of burgers. And in our drive up that other side of the highway, we actually ran into the brother of the guy who drove us across the river. He had made a number of mistakes in his jet boat with his hunting partner, ran out of fuel, ended up coming back to town, and they were going to try hiking in somewhere else. So I'm like, okay, well, not everybody is great at this. There are others that make mistakes, and they've done this before. So it was shocking that it was actually the brother of the guys we met. So they were both up there separately. Yeah. The guy's name from Cranbrook was Rory, and his brother, I can't quite remember, Rich, but in any event, we talked to them for a bit, and they were staying at the lodge, and we had a chat with those guys at the lodge that night, and we met some other guys. And I remember distinctly some really old guy, sheep hunter. He had like this necktie scarf thing on him. Like, if that guy can do it, we can do it. And that's how I really thought of it. Like, there's no way that we can't do this. We're pussies. Like, something's wrong with us. Yeah. So we ended up going in that way the next day, spent a whole day hiking in, got to a spot. Again, we could see a valley where we could probably get to. And we somehow or another, and pardon my series of events, but the next day we hiked about another half day in, still couldn't get to anywhere where we realized we could see sheep. And I hate to say this, we turned around again. And
no way. Really?
We went back to the lodge, and I'm so embarrassed to say that, but I share that with you because we went back to the lodge. I'm sorry for speaking so much, but we ended up meeting another group of sheep hunters and started sharing stories about all these mistakes we were making. Those guys who we met, the brother, he was back there as well, and we just started saying, like, we've really messed this up. And they kind of said, yeah, you did, but this is what it is. Like, this is how you do things. But we spent the whole next day driving around, looking out at areas, going up random roads and spots that we were told about, and eventually started our drive home, cutting I think we were supposed to be out there 10 days. We were only out there for 5 days, of which we saw 0 sheep other than on the highway and a porcupine, and ran into a bunch of hunters who gave us some valuable information. So I look back at all that and go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we made all those mistakes and actually tried to do something, because without those conversations, we would be completely lost in the dark and we would really just be pussies. And it was shocking. So in hindsight, it's so great that all that happened, but to admit defeat as a 38-year-old guy who's 6'3" tall white dude who works out regularly, it was embarrassing. And that was my first trip sheep hunting.
Well, when you think about it, it could have been worse, right? I mean, it could have been, I don't even know if embarrassing is the right word, but defeating. Let's say you booked a flight somewhere, a float plane or a jet boat, and get dropped off and go through the same misery on your first trip. But it's, I think it's interesting just listening to you and thinking about the journey that Blake and I have had, and myself personally over the years as a sheep hunter, what you would tell yourself in those days that you can't do versus what you tell yourself today that you can do. Isn't it incredible how different it is?
Chuck, it really is. Yeah, it really is. And to know, looking at our Google Earth maps on our way home, that we were really just a kilometer away from probably some of the most premier sheep hunting area off the highway ever. We look back at that, going, oh my gosh, this is such a shame, but you don't know what you don't know, and you do have to try it. And I'm so glad that I made those mistakes. And to top it all off, Chuck, I had like an Osprey backpack from Sport Check. I had Lululemon shirts. Like, I had no idea. Another cool part of the story is Rich was going to buy a backpack from Precision Optics on our way out there, because he had some old frame backpack. He's going to go to Precision Optics.
Sure.
So we got to run into Omer, and I didn't know who Omer was at the time, but he literally fitted a backpack to Rich for almost 2.5 hours. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell is this? Like, I could not believe that somebody would take so much care and attention into fitting a backpack and then sharing some stories. And I remember looking at a photo he shared with me of his feet and starting to talk about his boots and how you can really mangle your feet out there. I'm like, oh my God, my feet are going to fall off. Like, this is not good. Like, what am I getting into? So
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it. And that was one of the most instrumental introductions to the community that I relive to this day. And he shared something on that really meant a lot to me. It's like, oh, and this was talking about the sheep society and sheep hunting and talking about giving back. And it turned into a conversation of him fitting his backpack to him, but also about if you can't give back time to a community like this, give back money or something
Money.
along those
Yeah.
lines. And again, I didn't really realize what that meant at the time, but it's so eye-opening now that it's like, oh my gosh, like I get it. I truly get it. Needless to say, I didn't have a rifle. I wasn't going to buy one from Omer, but if he fit a backpack for 2 hours, he's going to tell me exactly what to buy when I get home. So that's what I did. I bought my first rifle after my first trip. Kind of
Yeah.
going, please just give me whatever you think is good. And he explained everything, talk about what he does. And it was so awesome. A really, really cool experience.
Sort of a you wouldn't expect such a profound experience from a random grocery store in the Northern Caribou in BC, would you?
No, we show up and it's like groceries. I'm like, we're in the wrong spot. And I tell you, we eventually got shuffled to the back, and it's like, oh wow, again, I didn't even have a rifle, so I knew nothing. Let's just say I knew literally nothing.
Yeah. No, it's funny, when you think about just on Omer and precision optics just for a second, imagine how many stories there are of guys like you. I know the first time, like I've known Omer for a long time, and I've known his family for even longer. And I remember the first time I stopped in with Blake,
Mhm.
and at that time, Blake had heard me talking about him and stuff, but we weren't, Spike Camp wasn't even, a thought at that time. And I remember stopping in, and I said to him, I said, Blake, we got to stop in and see Omer for a few minutes. I was buying something. I don't know what it was. I said, but this is going to take us 2 hours. And he's like, what? I said, yeah, we're going to be in this grocery store for 2 hours. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, we got a lot of road to cover, We came out of that, and Blake says to me, we get in the truck, and he goes, that was the most amazing 2 hours I've ever had. Like all the knowledge from sheep hunting to optics to backpack, like it's absolutely incredible. So good big plug for our buddy Omer there. That's awesome.
Absolutely, Chuck. Yeah. And he did tell me in that store on that day, you're either going to be a sheep hunter forever or this will be your last trip. And that's
Yeah.
also stuck with me.
Oh, that's a cool story. Wow. Well, let's fast forward to next year, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the next year you went on a sheep hunt with some buddies. Was it the very next year where you guys had some success, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Might be a YouTube video somewhere on that too, right?
And we apologize for that. Sorry, everybody.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Jess, there is no secrets in sheep hunting, especially in that country. So why don't you fill us in on that story? Because that is actually a really fun story too.
Sure, absolutely. And I'll try and expedite it. But we ended up wrangling up another guy to come with us. We were able to share how crazy our poorly spent experience was the year before. And he said, sure. So we hopped on River Jet Adventures and hopped on Jason's jet boat. And again, we knew kind of a spot where we were supposed to go based off of some conversation that Rich had with one of his friends, who's now also my friend, but he was an avid sheep hunter in his day. And knew Kevin and did all the trips with those guys. But we got off a number of hours up the Muskwa and hopped out, and we're kind of pointed in a direction. There could be a trail like this way. Just make sure you stay on one side of the hill and you'll get to the lake. And sure enough, we disobeyed those rules and said, it looks a lot shorter if we go this way. We're looking at a map and going, oh, why don't we just go that way? So what was to be 5 hours turned into about 8 or 9. With no trail after about the first 300 yards, which is so shameful. But we ended up going the opposite way around the hill to get to the lake, and ended up getting to the lake. And by this time, it was just coming up to dusk, and we got our spotters out. And again, we're pretty haggard. We drank a bunch of water this time, which was smart. But get the spotters out and we could look across the lake into a bunch of different mountaintops. And I was like, holy cow, this is incredible. And one of the things on the way in, or when we got to the lake, our new sheep hunting partner, we're looking across the lake and in these huge valleys. And what do you do if you see a sheep up there, he says. And we both looked at each other, Rich and I, and said, go up there and you get them. And he couldn't fathom the size of these mountains and us physically going up them, which I thought was kind of cool. But from the year before, we hiked up all those things. So now we're across the lake, we see lambs and ewes and wake up the next morning, hike in, and don't see any rams at that point. And we ended up going past a camp that already had people in it. And here I am thinking, I'm still a new sheep hunter going, there's no way anybody's in here. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's impossible. And foolish me, we pass a camp fully set up, teepee tent, fire that's been put out a day before. It looks like they've got a full rig, full setup, everything. I'm like, oh my God, somebody else is in here. And we didn't think much of it. It's a huge area. So we ended up going up one of the valleys and park an ass at the bottom and set up our tent and realized we're going to go up this way today, that way tomorrow, and then we'll do that one. And we ended up seeing sheep that very next day, and we saw rams on the hills. We saw a small band, and then we saw a single ram, which I still remember. It was hot as ever. And the amount of mosquitoes per square meter was no less than 1 million. And I never experienced that. So now we're covered in bugs and looking at rams across the hill, and it's hot as heck out. And it looks like this ram's dying trying to get up this hill because it's so hot. I'm like, oh my God, these things they're in trouble. Like they're in trouble again, not knowing anything because it's fucking hot out. So we ended up looking at it. We knew that it wasn't a legal ram. So we ended up going up another valley, and as we're walking up the side and get to a spot where we can glass, because we didn't know you're supposed to glass from the bottom and then go up when you see something. We were going up to the tops, looking as far as we could across the way, and then nope, nothing here. Go back down, go up the next one. So we get up to the top of one of these hills and look across, and that was my first experience seeing a grizzly bear coming down the hill the other side. I'm like, oh my golly, that's something else. Like I didn't know whether to be worried or not, but it was quite a ways away and didn't really think too much of it after we started looking the other direction. So that was kind of neat. But we turn around and there's a band of about 5 or 6 rams that are just staring at us. Like they'd probably been looking at us for who knows how long. We turn around and we're like, oh my God, they can hear us talking. They can, like, you couldn't chuck a rock that far, but you could definitely shoot it with an open sight type thing. And they book it. As soon as we turn around and start talking, they're gone. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to find them. They went down the hill, up the other side of the mountain faster than I could possibly fathom. And I was so impressed to see how an animal like that can live out there and do that. Like it took us 3 days to get here. It took them 15 minutes to get across the entire side of the hill onto the next hill. Like, oh my goodness, we're in trouble. So we're hiking around in that side trying to find them again, and go another couple days and see a few rams here and there. And turns out they're all young rams. And we're now day 8 or 9 of our 10-day trip. Day 9, back on the other side of the lake, and we look up the hill and we spot that same band of rams. And it turns into like, oh my gosh, like we gotta get to these things. So we're spotting it, we're seeing them, and we all believe that one is legal. And again, we understand what legal is, and we go through the process of do we all agree it's legal? And again, it's up at the top of the hill. I'm like, yeah, let's go up and get a closer look. Meanwhile, we had names for all these rams to be staring at them for so long, and I realized that's what people do. But the ram we ended up getting, we had nicknamed Ric Flair, and we've got a friend that we really took the piss out of, but he got kicked out of the band of rams, and that was our friend we take the piss out of, and that was, I don't want to say his name, but we just named them all, and just kind of, we had nothing else to do except stare at these things. So we're nearing the end of our trip, trying to get up the hill after we're literally walking out of our trip, and get up to the top of this hill, and they're now right below us. And we spent 5 hours with my spotter, with Rich's spotter, with Skylar's binos, staring at the thing, which was about 330 yards away. we ended up getting as close as we possibly could, and the heat waves, that particular moment, you couldn't see anything for the first 3 hours. It was just waves looking through your spotter. I'm like, you can't do anything. So a bit of cloud cover came over, and I could hear Rich counting to 8. He counted to 8 no less than 50 or 60 times. And I'm going, I'm counting to 8 too, as I understand what I'm supposed to be looking at. I see 8, I see 8. And we're fortunate for that cloud cover. And in an instant, about 5 hours into this, staring at this thing, Rich decides, I'm going to shoot it. And the whole purpose of this trip is Rich is going to shoot the first ram ever, and then the next year would be mine, and so on would be Skylar's. So he just asked me to back him up, and I lined up, and he lined up, and it all happened in an instant. He literally said, I'm going to shoot it. By the time I got my rifle down in my prone position, he had already rang out a shot. And we could all hear that, what? And we knew he hit it. And I remember the ram turning around and looking up the hill at us. And I was thinking, that thing just ate a bullet. And to this point, I'd only seen a bear go down, and it looked up at us and pretty much said, well, I guess I'm going to have to go up there and fuck him up. And I just remember that ram looking up, eating a bullet, going, I'm going to have to go beat somebody up, essentially. That ram was looking at us. He was bedded down with another ram, and I didn't get a shot off to back Rich up right away, which I feel terrible about to this day. But the other ram ended up moving in front of the ram, and they just stood there. And I'm thinking, one of these things just ate a bullet. What the hell are they doing? They should be running. But sure enough, it didn't. And we both had sights on the ram that he had just shot. It was standing there perfectly, like nothing had happened. And a few moments go by, which seemed like an eternity, and that the younger ram moved out of the way, and Rich rang out another shot, and the thing buckled, and it started tumbling down the hill, and we all looked at it going, you got it, you got it, you got it. And we were elated, like elated,
oh, yeah,
hugging.
sure.
And I even get goosebumps thinking about it at this moment. Like we were elated. We were haggard from 10 days out there. This was the very last day of our trip. We got picked up the next day. We ran into these rams like day 3, lost them for the entire trip. Now we've got a ram that's down, and it's tumbled down the hill, probably about 100 yards. And we all agreed that that's where it is. We just kind of gave it a few minutes, relaxed, took some deep breaths, and started hiking over to go and find it. And we were way off to where it ended up. We were about 50 yards below it when we were looking for this thing. Oh my God, we've lost this stupid thing. And keep in mind, I'm a new hunter, and I realize this is very poor etiquette and stuff now, but we spent the next hour searching for the thing. We just had to go up the hill like 50 yards. It was right there next to a tree.
Yeah. Sure.
But in any event, the rams now completely expired, and we go and count just to make sure. We did make sure before, but we all agreed that it was a legal ram, and sure enough, it was an 8-year-old ram, 8.5. I was just born in spring. Blah blah blah. But we were elated. Now I got to see my first experience of how you process an animal on a hill like this. Holy Christ! So we ended up processing the animal, all carrying out meat, and Rich carried the head and the horns, and we got back to the river that very day. And for those who have eaten sheep, I know you'll agree that that was the single best meal I've had in my entire life, was those ribs of that sheep. And we were told by Jason, whatever you do, eat the ribs. And it's like, okay.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Again, it didn't mean anything until we did it, but I could still remember it. I could see it cooking on the fire. I can taste it. I can think about it. And it was just an emotional, incredible experience. And I get emotional thinking about it. So we got picked up the next day. Jason was stoked. We got a sheep, and we got the hell out of there and ate about $200 worth of Boston pizza in the car ride home, and
yeah, for sure.
Did it all in one go. But that was that trip.
That's awesome. So did any of you three have experience in caping an animal?
Rich has harvested, I'm not going to say 100 animals, but he's got lots. So he's pretty much the guy who handled all that. Skylar at that point had already harvested a number of animals too, but me, other than a bear, 0.
Mm-hmm. So had you when did you take your first big game animal then?
It would have been 2020, that same year. So I ended up harvesting and
Okay.
shooting my first bear that
Gotcha.
same year, early in the spring. And there's a video of that too, and you can just see the shock in my eyes after I shot, thinking I missed the thing. But they're like, no, you got it, don't worry. But my heart's going like this, and I just couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it.
So your bear was earlier that year. So your first kill that you were on was your black bear in the spring of 2020.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That's a big jump from black bear to a stone sheep on the side of a mountain on a backpack trip. But I mean, both memories obviously totally epic, right? So,
To this day, it's not much that's been said for sure.
yeah. Oh, I know for sure. So presuming, I mean, without a doubt, that the sheep hunt really set the hook for you for these adventure hunts, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I just appreciated the outdoors, the thought in my mind, thinking that nobody else has ever been in that spot, and knowing that most people don't do this. It just struck a
Mhm.
chord with me, and I thought it was super cool.
What would you say your most profound aha moment was? Like, what was the memory you came out of there? What was the first thing you said to your wife? I guess, one of those moments, like, this is why I'm doing it. What was that?
That's a good question, but I know the answer. And at the time, I was well into real estate and working, and work was busy. The fact your cell phone doesn't work when you're out there was the
Yeah.
highlight of my trip. Um, it took a year or two after that to realize you shouldn't go into the bush without. So if you go into the bush, I think with stuff still on the table at home or issues with your relationship or anything like that, I think it's a very poor idea. But I
Mhm.
realized quickly that the fact my cell phone doesn't work is really the best part about it. That seems so strange, but for me, it struck a chord.
You're so right about that. I've had this discussion with a few people in the last year, and you know who you are. A good buddy of mine and I were on a trip this year, and we were talking about how homesickness can ruin a hunt for somebody. And homesickness comes in a variety of strains, right? Like you said, it could be something you left unattended at work. More often than not, it's something at home that needs attention, or it didn't go right on the way out, or if your partner doesn't have or it doesn't support your vision as a hunter, then it's probably not going to work very well. Or at least you're not going to have as much fun as you possibly can, because there is nothing better than switching that switch off from day to day to backcountry living, right? Like there's nothing better.
It couldn't be further from the truth. You're exactly right. And I use the word, it's kind of primal. Like the only thing out
Yeah.
there is you and whatever's going to kill you. Like it's pretty neat. It's really, really special.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to unpack there. So what was your gear like on that trip? Because I mean, you're going pretty fast now. Like you went from 3 failed attempts up the highway on the highway hunts with the Osprey pack to a visit with Omer to a sheep hunt the next year and a dead ram. I mean, holy smokes! You bet your gear looked different.
Oh, Chuck, I think you and I share a gear addiction.
Oh, I know.
I learned
So
very
that was
quickly that,
a pointed question, my friend.
yeah, I got into it pretty deep, and I didn't know what I was getting into, but yeah, I had everything that one could ever need for a sheep trip for
Yeah.
that trip. Everything, and probably two of them, which I feel shame about, but
Yeah.
yeah, I had, gosh, like a swallow spotter. I had a beautiful rifle. I had all the Kuyu gear at the time, and I was like, oh man, this is so sweet. But yeah, I dove headfirst into it and spent an entire sheep camp worth of money on that stuff, and I don't look back,
Mhm.
or I don't regret it at all. It was awesome, and I still do
Just
it, and I don't need it anymore.
just one or two multi-million-dollar real estate deals in Richmond, Jess, and then you got all that hunting stuff done in one bite.
Okay, that's the only positive we have in the Lower Mainland. Yes, homes are
Yeah,
more
I guess.
expensive than throughout BC, so I'm fortunate now.
Yeah, that market was hopping in those days too, so that's good.
Oh, Christ, yeah.
All right, so I mean that just unpacking those 2 years is just that's an incredible journey for a new hunter.
It's from here to here. That's what it was like. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, tell us about your first personally successful, in terms of harvest goes, mountain hunt. Because I know it wasn't short. It was the next year you went on a pretty good hunt as well, right? Was it the next year or the year after? I can't remember now.
I promise I'll make these stories quicker, and I apologize.
No,
So the
we're
next
here
year,
for stories, buddy.
okay, the next year we had 4 guys on the trip: Skylar, myself, Rich, my hunting partner, and Adam. And it was my year to shoot the ram, and I was so excited. I know now that it doesn't really matter if you harvest the animal, but at the time I was really devastated. But we went in another area, hiked in, and we ended up spending a number of days in there. 2 of the guys were going to go for elk. We were going to go for sheep, but it turned out everybody going for sheep because we spotted some very nice rams. And this was a later season hunt, so this was in September. So we got in, and to make a very long story short, hiked in as far as we could, really quite a ways, 26, 27, 28 kilometers. And then there was probably another 10 or 12 to go until you hit the next river. But we were perched at the top of the slope, all of us glassing down, and there was trees down below, and they were kind of sparse and sporadic, and we spotted some rams, and there was 11 of them, if not 10 or 11 of them, and we're going, oh my goodness. And we couldn't catch up to them at that point. Hiked back out to our camp, hiked back in, and we split up, and we're trying to find where they could possibly be. And we ended up getting sights on them again. The 2 other guys who were quite a number of yards this way let us know that, hey, we got them, they're down here. So we all reconvened, and we knew that the way the landed terrain was set up, they kind of would probably go, like, there was only a certain spot that they would go. So we were just trying to catch up to that spot as fast as we could, thinking that I hope they bed down somewhere around there, because we were literally perched over at a perfect spot where we could see everything. And sure enough, the plan worked. We were running, and I ended up looking over the crest of the hill, and I'm, holy Jesus, they're right there. And I turn around to the guys, I'm like, quiet down. And sure enough, there's 9 of those rams just lying 99 yards to 120 yards, like literally right there. It felt like you could have thrown a rock at them. So the 4 of us were up on the top of the hill. We were all back at this point. It turned into Rich was going to guide me to make sure I shoot the right ram. And we all had this conversation. Rich and I'll go up there. You guys stay back, because if they get sights on any of us, they're gone. And sure enough, Rich and I go up there, and keep in mind, this was also filmed, and Skylar, one of my best friends, he wanted to get all of this on film. So as we're staring at these rams, all of this happened, like from the time Rich and I were up there to the time the rams took off. I've ruined the story, about 5 minutes. So we're staring at these rams. I'm lined up. Rich is like, it's the one on the left. Okay, it's the one on the left. I understand it. We could have shot 2 of those rams, no doubt. But okay, one of the rams moved right in front of the other one. Like, okay, as soon as he moves, I'm going to shoot. And all of a sudden, Rich and I look at each other. The rams can book up, and they're gone.
God.
And we're staring. No. Rich and I are staring at each other, going, what the hell just happened? Skylar is about 15 yards away from us. We couldn't really see him, but there's a rocky ledge here. Adam's about 25, 30 yards away from us, a rocky ledge there. They both came up to the edge of the rocks, and we're looking at the same rams we were. And I don't know, like a little meerkat looking over the ledge. They caught sight of those guys, and those rams were gone. And I remember those rams being very chocolate in color versus the early season coat, which I thought was super cool. Yep. They looked much thicker. Everything about them was stunning. So you can see, like on the video this kind of film, you can see like the wind just completely come out of me, going, oh my gosh, like we could have walked out of this with 4 guys and 2 rams on our backs, and we'd have 0.
Jeez.
It was devastating. So that was that trip. We ended up leaving and going home, and obviously they're still our friends.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. May I talk about the next trip?
Yes.
Or do you
I
want to
wanna
talk
hear the
about that
next one. No, you bring it up. I know there's a happy ending coming here soon.
one? Well, after this person, I'm so sorry. The next season, I also ran into you on the jet boat. As you recall, I was with Jay. So
Yeah.
I got out, and I know I've shared some photos with you, but we spent some time in where we were and ended up looking at a small band of 3 rams and kind of hummed and hawed. And I was 99%, he was 85%. And we didn't shoot a ram that turned out to be a legal ram. Ran into an outfitter. It was my first experience meeting an outfitter. How interesting that could be. And
Depending
really
on the
wasn't.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a nice guy at heart, and I couldn't believe the way we were being spoken to, if that makes sense. And I was shocked.
Yeah.
But I get it. I understand it now. And yeah, on that trip, I got to stare at a ram that was an 8-year-old ram, and it was 12 yards in front of us. And his 2 other buddies were just hanging out there. And they were coming down the goat trail that we were kind of perched on. And I was freaking out at the time and going, Jay, is this thing gonna like ram us? Like, should I be worried? Like, no, no, just hang out. Don't worry. And those rams fed below us at 12 to 20 yards for a half an hour. It was incredible. The most incredible experience to see a sheep that close in my life. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I know there's a glory photo coming on one of these mountain hunts.
Yeah,
I got the text message.
Yes. I did also get to Alaska that same year. I donated some money to actually turns out the Idaho Wild Sheep Foundation, and I got a trip from that. Some call it donate, some call win. But I got to get to Alaska, and in short, it was supposed to be a 10-day trip. I was out there for 16. I saw the outside of the cabin we were in for about 2.5 days, and the rest was fogged in and snowed in.
Brown bear hunt, right?
Yeah. So I had an unhappy wife thinking I was going to be at home 10 days, and it turned out to be 16, but the plane couldn't come in and get us. It was something else. But the next year, really special, was my first mountain goat, which I thought was super cool.
That's what I was waiting for.
Oh, man, I know I told you this story, but I'll make it as good as possible. I was very fortunate. I've learned that if you ask a lot of questions, say yes to almost everything with respect to hunting, ask pointed questions, and just be a sponge with information. There are some avenues to learn things from people. And I had the opportunity of speaking with some people in the sheep community. And we got into a spot, in short, that was supposed to be a sheep trip. We ended up hiking all the way in, had a great time, saw a bunch of stuff, except for wildlife. And ended up hiking up 2 different valleys, saw a beautiful lake, which was really cool. And we ended up seeing 5 billy goats. They were about 800 yards above us at the time from the bottom of the lake. They were almost at the snow line. And we walked into this little valley almost to a lake, and we spotted these white dots. Both Rich and I said, well, let's get the spotters out and see if we can see what it is. Sure enough, it's goats. We believe those are billy goats. We can tell by the way they're walking, all the signs of a male goat. So we literally geared down to our lightest packs possible at that moment. It took no less than 30 seconds of us confirming that those are goats that we could harvest, and we decided to go after those goats. And everybody on here probably knows those hills don't look very steep from here, but when you get up to them, they're really quite steep. So we said, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to get up there. Several hours later, those goats had not moved, and we're still hiking up this goddamn thing to get as close as we possibly can. I remember this vividly. My binoculars have a rangefinder, and it was 454 yards. And I had never shot a gun further than 200 yards because that's what the range goes to. And Rich says, you shoot. I've got the sheep already. This is your goat. It's your trip. This is a sheep trip, but you take the goat. So I lined up and chose the goat I wanted to shoot, which was, I think, the second most mature, but they were all very mature goats. And I lined up. I took my breaths like I was supposed to. I ended up pulling the trigger, and I shot that goat at 454 yards. the one thing I learned about the rifle that I have, and this is one thing that Omer taught me or told me, is that the muzzle jump on this particular round in this rifle is very low. So I remember so vividly looking, taking the shot, seeing the bullet through my scope, hit the animal, and it crumpled. There was
Wow.
no other movement, nothing. And it then proceeded to fall about I don't know, 50 to 75 yards downhill. But I was like, oh my God, like not only did I shoot something the furthest I've ever shot, I literally dispatched it in one shot and it did not breathe another breath. And I was like, this is the most ethical thing that I've ever done, because I'd shot a
Yeah.
deer the year before and I ended up taking out his hindquarter and I had to walk up to the thing. It was staring at me while his back legs weren't working. I was like, oh my God, please don't let this happen again. But this goat crumpled, and again, elation and goosebumps and hugs and everything was crazy. It was a very, very exciting trip. And yeah, it was extremely memorable. Extremely
So
memorable. But I
Jess,
did
what?
get
Sorry to interrupt you. What rifle were you shooting, and what was your optic?
so it's a loophole Mark V,
Yeah.
and the rifle is 7 SAUM. It happens to be a Gunworks Climber. The
Mm-hmm.
only reason I have that rifle is the year before I said if I do a certain amount of transactions in the year, I'm going to treat myself to something special, and that was my
It's
special gift.
the businessman's plan to buy something really expensive.
Yeah, I had to talk my wife into it.
Yeah, just so you know, I'm not your wife, and I do the exact same bullshit line. I'm sure she's listening. And I haven't fooled her for like 30 years, Jess. So fool her while you
Oh,
can, because it isn't gonna last.
okay, good. Yeah, but that 7 SAUM dispatched that animal, and I remember watching it
Yeah.
through the scope, and it was incredible.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, you had the right setup. I mean, that is a great caliber, a great scope, great rifle, and good advice from our buddy Omer too. And killing a goat with one shot at any range is an accomplishment. I had a similar situation with my first goat this year with Ed Thompson, and there is nothing better. First of all, you don't want them doing a swan dive off a cliff. You want to
Yeah.
anchor them if you can. So that's an awesome story, man.
Can I
So
go ahead?
yeah, keep going, keep going.
So we hiked out, and that was awesome. But I forgot to say earlier that year, I guess you can consider a big game animal, but a predator actually. And you know this, but I got to harvest a cougar, which was incredible. And that's only because I kept on saying yes to every possible opportunity. Every single possible opportunity where there was a hunting experience involved. Yes, 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 yes. And I was very fortunate to meet your last guests, the Summers family. And
Yeah. Oh yeah.
you ask a lot of questions and you don't be a dick, and sometimes good things happen. They really do.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I was going to touch on that because you and I, it's funny how our paths seem to cross all over the place. And
Yeah.
I can't remember how we discovered it, that we both fish with them, but we were having a conversation on that boat and we started talking about fishing. But, you make a really good point. Say yes, especially if you're learning, if you want to learn and you want to make contact. And yeah, you've gone about it the right way. That cougar hunt, that was something special too. So anyway, back to the goat hunt. I'm real curious about this because I just experienced my first goat hunt as well, and they are an impressive animal. And there's a lot of weight to a goat and mass to a goat, right? What'd you think about the pack out?
Hell. In short, it was hell. I ended up tumbling on the trail a bunch of times, and I was just haggard. Like, again, I'm a pretty fit guy, but I just couldn't believe it. And then Rich and I were both having conversations like, how do people take 2 animals off the hill? And you guys don't have to answer that, but I just don't get it. Like, if you're 20 or 30 kilometers back, like, how on earth do you get 2 animals and all the meat out? And again, maybe it just comes back to me being a bit of a fancy. I don't know. Is that a thing? I don't know. So it was hell.
You know what? I think it's probably a similar comparison to, when you were at the Toad River Lodge and driving up that first valley and going, how in the hell do these guys climb these mountains? I think it's one of those problems you tend to solve after you got 2 animals down at the same time on a double header and then figure it out. I've had double headers with deer, but I have not had a double header with a mountain animal 30K back. But I think it's one of those things, you'd find a way to do it. But boy, oh boy, but it's done every year. Guys in worse shape than you and I for sure out there managing to pull it off every year. And I think it's more about the muscle between the ears than the muscle on the body, right?
Absolutely, Chuck. Yeah. And was one thing that Rich told me before our first trip is just, yeah, physical is one thing, but just don't go squirrely up here and it'll be fine. And sure enough, I'm not squirrely. So,
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, you've got so much done in such a short time span of years hunting. I find it interesting when I chat with you. It's like, wait a minute, you started hunting when? And you've done all this. You've been on all these trips. It's crazy, Jess. It really is. So I got a couple questions about that. So, what would you say? I usually do rapid fire at the end of these things, and we'll do that too. But I'm just curious, as a hunter with so much under your belt, such a short period of time, any real lessons or aha moments or things that really stand out to you as lessons learned in that short time frame?
yes, and maybe this is more group specific than anything, but obviously for those who go out there, you have all the time in the world to talk to your hunting partner or partner. So a lot of weird conversations come up, which is normal, I think. But it turns into like you make rules. What's rule number one? What's rule number two? And rule number one is don't leave the horse trail if you don't have to. Like simple things that you just don't know. Don't leave the horse trail until you need to. But rule number two is don't ever pass up water. That's very important. I learned that very early on. And again, you don't know what you don't know. But all those things is just have a willingness to be out there and know that as long as you put trust in the person you're with, it's probably going to be okay. The chances of something very poor happening are relatively low. So don't let your mind take over, and just enjoy while you're out there. Like it's a drive for us from Vancouver to get out there. So you're driving a day to get anywhere, to go somewhere cool. You can fly, but so it's a day to drive. It's another couple day hike in. Like just enjoy it. That's your time. And I never complain, and I hope Rich would say the same, and Skylar, and I know there's a guy on here named Greg who I've hunted with, but I just never complain. There's no point. Like we're only above ground for a short amount of time. So I take all those things and kind of put it into a little ball and go, this is the greatest life I've ever lived. It's the only life I've ever lived, and it's really special. So just enjoy it. Don't leave the horse trail. Drink as much water as you can, and know that you're not going to die.
Yeah, I think I kind of laugh because we see all these motivational quotes and T-shirts and things about sheep hunting and backpack hunting, and don't leave the horse trail should be one. That's a great one.
Damn straight. Yeah, it's so comfortable on the horse trail.
It is. Yeah, there's a reason why the horse went there. So
exactly.
Well, interesting. When I listen to your stories, you're referring to your buddies, hunting partners. Let's talk about that. I mean, you obviously had big influence from your friend Rich. Buddies with Skylar, and I know you mentioned Greg. What's it been like? Have you seen an interesting evolution in your friendships with these guys as you go on hunting trips with them? And I guess any advice for someone new trying to find hunting partners, because this gets talked about a lot. Big mistakes happen with hunting partners, and unfortunately sometimes that's the only way to learn from them is to make them, right?
Yeah. I think I can share this, but like I was so desperate to go on that trip when I ran into you the second time, because my hunting partner Rich couldn't go on the opener. Right. I was like, and the Summers family told me, you got to go on an opener every single year. You can still do this. So I was desperate to find somebody to go with. And I'd asked, Rich couldn't make it. And I was very fortunate that Jay offered the opportunity to go out as friends and be out there seeing things. And that meant a lot to me. But I still, I can only go certain times with certain hunting partners. And I'll literally go anytime. If anybody wants to go on an opener, I'll go this year type thing. But I don't complain. I don't do anything. But I guess coming back to your question, it is very important. And even the guys we've talked about, Like Rich, I know I can go with anywhere. Skylar and Greg are great, but some of those guys can't do those types of trips, and they want to, but family takes them to one side or the other, and timing takes them to one side or the other. So yeah, I just lucked out in having Rich kind of mentor me and be a part of my life as a friend and as a hunting partner. But the biggest thing that I think one could do to get into the community and find somebody of like mind is to get out, volunteer time. And I'm not sucking up or doing anything, but if you meet other people that have the same mindset, it's going to be a lot easier finding somebody that way than walking up through Walmart. Hey, you want to go on a sheep hunt? But if you find another sheep hunter or a person who hunts goats, spend time volunteering, spend time going to the mountain hunting expo and items and events like that, because I don't know, it's shocking that people don't go to those things, because once you're there, like last year as an example, I got so much information about stuff I didn't even know just by having conversations with like-minded people. So I think the best thing for somebody to do is to go to an event like that, spend some money, meet the people who are of like mind, and you're gonna wrangle up a conversation that gets you to the point where you want to go, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly. You couldn't have said it any better. And I think I was one of the next topics I wanted to talk about was in fact conservation, and in particular the Wild Sheep Society. But when you look at the events that we're lucky enough to be a part of here in BC, just with Wild Sheep Society BC alone, between the sheep counts, the golf tournament, they do pub nights, and then of course the mountain hunting expo, which to me is it's just amazing to watch it evolve. I went to my first one a few years back in Kamloops, and it was a couple of vendors in a hallway, and the seminars have always been lights out, extremely good, with great speakers, and the banquets were fun. But now, I mean, this is a real powerful snowball that's rolling down a hill, gaining momentum, and that show is going to be off the hook. Have you seen this? Like, just the roster of speakers they keep announcing day in and day out. They didn't invite you and I on as speakers, but maybe another day.
They don't want to hear me, I assure you.
No, they sure don't want to hear me. But anyway, you start thinking about it, and Nolan Wanup said it best to me when I had him on very early on in the Spike Camp, one of our first live streams. He said, I'm not the kind of guy that can put the boots on the ground, but I can certainly help with my wallet. And I try to do the same whenever possible. Just life is so busy, and between career, family, and projects and things like that, sometimes it's just hard to be a volunteer. But to get to know people, those things are great. And I know you're a big supporter from a financial perspective with the auctions. I mean, I played in your golf foursome this year at the golf tournament in Kamloops. And when did you first? I know you had the meeting with Omer, your first visit. When did you start getting involved in conservation and with wild sheep?
I would say our next trip, so year 2, I think I was, and I'm sure those guys could tell me if that's the year I actually bought, like 2020, I would have bought my lifetime membership. It might have been the year after, but again, the words from Omer stuck with me and said, if you can't donate time, donate money. And like, we all live a life, and we're all busy doing certain things, and some people are busier than others. There's big fish and small fish. But yeah, I thought, oh my God, like, I love this. I literally love the people. I love what they're doing. And the more I've learned about that, I think it's incredible. And even to get my wife on board with understanding why that stuff's cool to me is important. Like, she donates to certain things, which I think are weird, but you just got to find something that makes sense for you. But yeah, I think I started getting my lifetime membership just because I thought sheep hunting was so cool, and not knowing where that money went at the time, it's like, whatever. Let's get a membership. I think that'd be cool. But I think it started pretty quickly. And then the fact you can get sweet prizes, that's not everything, but man, they put a lot of time and effort into that stuff. And like, you can get a grizzly trip, for Christ's sakes. If you pay for it, you can get whatever you want. I think it's kind of cool. You can get a knife from a fancy knife maker. You can get all these cool things, and it goes to a good cause. And you can just donate money, which is cool too. So yeah, does that answer your question, Chuck? I apologize. I got off.
It does. Yeah, it does for sure. And then one of the things that that you touched on is the auctions and the raffles and the prizes. And there's an adrenaline rush too when you go to these events.
I'm already getting revved up. I get it.
Oh, I know. That's awesome. Have you been to Reno to the sheep show there?
No, not yet. We were going to try and go, I think 2 or 3 years ago, turned into not an option. So it just hasn't made sense to this point, but we will. I appreciate you
Oh
sharing how
man,
cool it was for you. Yeah.
so much fun. Yeah, it's epic. And just in comparison to what we see with Penticton with the Salute to Conservation and the Expo, that it's just it just feels just like the little brother show to Reno. So what you
Mhm.
see in Penticton just multiply with a big factor, and that's what you have in Reno. And the amount of money, like I'm very excited for our chapter or our affiliate, I guess, Wild Sheep
Yeah.
PC, for the amount of money that's going to be raised. I know that they had the Northern fundraiser this past weekend, and I'm pretty sure, I haven't heard all the details yet, but I know it went really well. So yeah, it's great. We need to do our part, conservation for sure. We got to keep those sheep on the mountain, right?
Absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to chat with you about, I know you're a really active guy, like physically. Has fitness and athletic health been part of your life, like pre-hunting? Like, were you an athlete growing up?
I was an athlete. Yeah. I've always been active, but I changed the way I train now. And sure, I'm not a muscle bound beast like some of my friends, but I'm a functional muscular person, which is cool. But yeah, I think it has changed absolutely. Instead of doing bench press, biceps, and triceps, it's turned into a lot of stuff. And it's so weird. It's Mountain Tough, the application that you can get on your phone
Mm-hmm.
is incredible, and that's me pumping tires for that because I'm a creature of habit. If it tells me to do something on day one, I'll literally do it. It's simple. I don't have to think. I don't do
Yeah,
anything. I go to the gym. It says do this, and like I'm on week 15 of postseason prep right now, which has been awesome. But no, it has changed. Yes, absolutely, Jeff.
that's cool. I'm glad you mentioned Mountain Tough. I'm chatting with them about doing something with them with Spike Camp. I ran into those guys in Reno, and I'm going to see them again next week in Salt Lake. But yeah, it's pretty cool. That in Reno they had this massive workout. I think there was 550 people doing a workout, and it was an ass kicker. I didn't personally do it. I was in the trade show, just immersed in it. But they gave away a sheep hunt as a giveaway during that hunt. So
Rough
that
prize,
attracted
yeah.
rough
Yeah,
prize, yeah.
yeah.
And the winner, oh my God, that guy was so jacked. You should have seen the video. I mean, he was oh, just off the hook.
Well, I'll
But
do a bunch of steroids and be ready for the next one. I'm just kidding.
yep, there you go, there you go. So what do you got planned for hunts for this year, Jess?
Uh, Admittedly, the only thing set in stone right now is Rich and I will get out for a sheep trip, which is going to be awesome. That's probably going to be early September.
Mm-hmm.
I have actually booked an elk trip in northern Alberta. I recall going out on our second trip, our
Mm-hmm.
third trip, and two guys were going to go for elk, and we tried calling elk, and I don't know how to call it. I've done that before, so I'd rather see somebody do it
Yep.
and enjoy the experience that way. So I'm going to go for prime rut in September to northern Alberta. I'm still trying to convince one of my other friends to go on a sheep opener and then get out in
Mm-hmm.
September with Rich for that. But we always do a end of November whitetail trip, which is 4 days, booze, fire, great food, which is pretty cool. But
Yeah,
that
not to
trip,
mention two really big bucks that you shot as a doubleheader this past year. I
that
saw
was
those
a good
pictures.
one. That was a truck hunt that turned into a sheep style hunt because those deer were at the top of the mountain and we were at the very bottom, and we should have driven up another kilometer or two, but we hopped out of the truck right then and there and ran to the top of the hill and got them. And then we dragged them down.
Nice bucks too, by the way.
I'm very excited to be able to put one of those on my wall. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it tastes good.
Oh yeah, well, there's nothing like good whitetail. So that your elk hunt, you're doing a guided hunt in Alberta?
I am, yep. And again, most of the people on here are going to think I'm nuts, but some Facebook
Oh,
posts came across. Sorry, Jack.
I said I've done a few guided hunts in Alberta for elk. It's
Oh, okay.
awesome.
Well,
You're gonna love it.
I'm sure it's going to be great, but it's just one of those days where it was a great day. Work was really bountiful, and I said, "The hell with it! I'm doing it." My friends
Yeah.
can't go at this time, so I'm going to do something. And sure enough, it turned into me booking with an outfitter that I've never heard of, but I've had so many conversations with now, and it's been a very comfortable experience. So,
Is it in Peace River country or farther north than that? Do you know?
I know this. It's above Grand Prairie. Oh golly, I know
Okay,
that.
North Grand. Yeah, there's lots of great country up there. Well, DM me offline about the who you're booking with, because I may know them. I know a few guys out there. You're not. You'll be in good hands, I'm sure. That sounds like
For
a
sure.
fun hunt. What are
Yeah,
your dates for that? Is that
I think
September?
Prime Ready says September 17th, so he says get up there
Yeah.
15, 16 and be ready to go. And he offered a bunch of different types of trips. Like if you're somebody who's less mobile, you can do a certain type of trip. Or
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting. I found, I guess there's all different types of hunters, but he's like, are you sure you can wear a backpack and hike for a day or two? I'm like, I'm going to be fine, I assure you. And to put the trust in somebody, and I've been on these types of hunts, I think I'm going to be okay. But it was neat having that conversation.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, good luck on that one. That'll be fun. And then you're just gonna see how LEH turns out then? Is that the plan?
Yes. Yep. I know that early sheep is open still, I think, until the 13th of February.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I worry for putting in for something like that because there's only so many people that can go on a type of trip like that. But I got to go into Coldfish last year, which was an early sheep drop.
Oh yeah. I wanted to talk to you about that hunt. Sorry, keep going.
That's okay. But I know I would never get 2 years in a row. But what if I got one of those premier Atlin area sheep hunts?
Yeah.
Like I would literally stop everything and do anything to get up there. But I just need a buddy, and I'd have to really talk one of those other guys into it.
Well, I can tell you what I've learned about that hunt is when somebody pulls that tag, there's usually no shortage of buddies. So you'd find somebody. You know?
Consider me in first to check it. So I said,
Yeah, there you go. Well, I know you have an interesting story, predator story from your hunt this year.
"Oh, go
Let's
yes."
hear that one.
We flew into Coldfish. We know you can't hunt the reserve, ecological reserve there, so we had every intention of walking to the second valley, which is about 25, 26K. And then you get there, and on the way in, we ended up seeing a couple goats on the main trail, and we passed those, and it's a sheep trip. So get up the next valley, walk all the way to the end, see zero wildlife, and we're both looking at each other like we're not that bad at spotting animals. Like something's going on here. There's zero. There was literally nothing. And it was a huge valley, like literally nothing. And maybe this happens, but there was nothing. Like it was almost void of anything living. So we get in about 2/3 of the way, take a break for lunch, and where we were, there was an old goat camp there, and that turned into a hill on this side and the hill over here. But to see this hill, which looked a bit more bountiful, we had to step away about 20 yards from this goat camp. Drop our packs, with that includes our rifle, everything. You've geared down and you've got your spotter and your tripod. And we're 20 yards, like you could see it, it's right there. And we're spotting up the side of the mountain above the trees over the goat camp. And the way the wind was, it was going in a direction that the wolves would have never known that we were there. And the height of all the foliage around us was about like maybe a little less than waist. And there were obviously openings and pockets, but both Rich and I looked at each other without much sound. There were 8 or 9 wolves that were running directly at us out of a bunch of trees and hovering. And I remember this, it's like they were from a horror movie, hovering through the land directly at us. And this all happened in mere seconds. They didn't know we were there. We didn't know they were there until we all saw each other. They diverted 70 degrees and just kept on their way. And we're without rifle, we're without pack, we're without anything. Like if those potentially were bears, or if they wanted to do something,
Yep.
we'd be dead. There's a 0% chance we'd have time to do anything. But having them come that quickly through that level of bush was the most impressive thing. And then seeing them run away, and the one in the back happened to be a black wolf. It was the size of a black bear. Like the ass of the thing was as high as my ass, and it was just running. I was like, holy Jesus, I could not believe the size of these things. It was amazing. But needless to say, don't ever leave your rifle. When you go take a shit, when you go for a pee,
Yep.
please take your rifle, because it could have gone so much worse, so much worse.
It's so true. We've had so many encounters, and I know just talking to people all the time about hunting and the situation in BC now. It just, you really can't when you're in the backcountry. You really shouldn't. At a bare minimum, have bear spray on you at all times, right? If nothing else. But
Yeah.
no, that's too bad you didn't get to have the guns there. You might have reduced the population a bit there. Hey.
And even that, Chuck, we talk about it to this day. It's like, gosh, it all happened so quickly. Like, I'm sure we would have fired at something, but like to get your sights on something that quickly would have been impressive. But I think looking back at it, like, I imagine there was no animals in that particular valley, because those wolves have been working it for whatever, the day or an hour. I have no idea, but there was zero, literally zero. So they were.
Wow, that's crazy, man. And you guys had some success on that trip too, right?
Yeah. We did end up seeing rams from where we were in that valley, but they were in the eco reserve. So obviously you can't do anything there. So we saw actual sheep. We had a few lambs and ewes above us at that goat camp, and that's what we were looking at primarily. But no, like we saw no rams within 5 kilometers, let's say. Like you could not go to the ecological reserve. It's impossible to get there, and it's not possible to hunt. So we both said to each other, well, you want to go see if the goats are still there? And we both kind of looked at each other, and we're only a few days in at this point, like 3 days. We were to be there for 11 or 12 days. We both said, yeah, sure. Let's go see if they're still there. Hiked back out to the main part of the valley, went to bed, hiked back up, and they were, I don't know, 3 kilometers from where we were. Looked up, 3 goats still there, all billy goats. And we created a plan to get closer to see if we could see them and get real close to them. It's interesting when you have those conversations with your hunting partner, and I know most of you guys have those, but it's like, should we go that way or that way? And should we stop here? And it's kind of a dance in your relationship, just knowing that you're both going to have difference of opinions, but you have to come to an outcome to get there. So we both agreed in this case to go up a particular way, but stay closer to the trees versus further. And we ended up getting 501 yards from those 3 goats. And it was a goat that Rich was going to take off the mountain, and we ended up getting a beautiful goat off that mountain. And
A nice billy.
oh, it was beautiful. And we got it inspected in Vanderhoof, and immediately the guy's like, oh wow, this is going to make book. And again, I'm too new to this. I realize what the book is now, but I didn't know what that meant. But it's a really nice goat, But that goat, he ate a bunch of bullets. That poor guy. And he tumbled down a shale, like a marble-sized shale hill for probably 300 plus yards. It was white when we shot it, and it was dark
It was black.
when we.
Yeah.
It was great. It was dark. Yeah.
Yeah, the pictures it's insane. You can tell that goat had quite the trip down the mountain. How did you guys get it aged? Do you remember how old that goat was?
It escapes my memory right now. I apologize.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. No, I don't even want to lie. I couldn't tell you. I just don't.
No, it was a nice goat. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was a real nice goat for sure.
But it was a dandy. Sorry, may I speak one?
Yeah.
Okay, we ended up getting this goat down, and we never have your meat near the tent, and we put it 75 yards away and go to bed. And we're haggard. And then we're hiking back out the next day, and I was fortunate to draw a caribou tag. So not only did I get the early sheep, we both got goat tags drawn, and I got a caribou tag. I know it's crazy, but we're hiking back to the main camp at Coldfish, and we're like, I guess we're not too tired. We still got a bunch of days here. Let's go see if we can find a caribou. You have to go the opposite way, but like 20K that way versus 20K this
Yeah.
way. And we ran into some guys at the camp, and they came back as we were pulling in, and we looked like death because we'd been hiking for 25, 26K, get back there in one day, and they're like, "Oh, you guys look like death," and they were looking perfectly fine. But an older guy and his nephew, and we'd asked them, "We're thinking about going up that way for caribou." Didn't see a fucking thing, the guy says. We've been out there for 5 days, saw nothing. And both Rich and I looked at each other, well, let's enjoy the fire and have some drinks. And then it turned into, admittedly, getting flown up the next day, and I regret that, but that's just how the flight schedule worked, and it's a shame, but I wish I would have stayed. And I know I said spend the time out there when you can, and we could have, so made a mistake.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a tricky one, right? With you've got the flights to consider, the weather, and you just got a hunting report after 25K pack out that these guys didn't see anything. So yeah, there's not a lot of intel to go on there, right?
No, it's pretty deflating. Yeah, but I tell you, the whiskey tasted real tasty that night.
Oh yeah, I bet it did. Did you? I was going to ask you about your grizzly hunt. Did you go back for the second one, or are you booked to do that too? Because you're going back.
I will go. I speak with. It's interesting. You become friends with those people. Again, if you're not a dick, you say yes a lot, and you're just a genuine person. Like we talk regularly. I talk to him at Christmas, and he's a 70-plus-year-old dude, living in Alaska, and he genuinely cares. I think it's really cool. But I do have the opportunity to get back there. I've tried to convince one of my hunting partners to go give it a try at a very discounted rate. But again, there's a bunch of no's. That one's it's tough with the wife. I was away for much longer than I was supposed to be, and she won't let that go.
You'll get there.
Oh, I will.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, before I forget, we're going to we have a winner of a little prize for the show tonight. We're going to give away some of Wardo's coffee. This is coffee. We got a 5-pack. I'm going to butcher your name, my friend. I'm sorry, but it's Adrian Homerosian. I don't know if I got that right, but I've got your name, Adrian. There you go. Blake's got it up there. So I'll get your contact info from him, and I will get that shipped out in the next day or two. And thanks for hanging out at the show, and thanks to This Is Coffee for the generous donations to give to all of our members here. Boy, we're flying through time, Jess. It's already an hour and a half. Can you believe it?
I'm sorry.
It goes quick.
Yeah,
Okay, we're gonna wind down here with the little rapid fire questions. Some of them you probably already answered, but we're gonna go through them anyway. So, first one, what's your favorite piece of gear with your many years of hunting experience under your belt? What's your favorite piece of gear?
It's gonna seem so strange, but the Stone Glacier puffies, I find comfort in those. No matter where you are, what you're doing, whether you're in the bush or in town, they make me comfortable. So if that makes sense, that's probably my favorite. That's the first that came to mind.
So those are in your pack on every hunt, your puffies.
Oh God, yeah, the down pants and the down jacket for sure. Yeah, they could save your life. I didn't use them yet for that, but yeah.
Okay. Well, you've been a little spoiled on this one already, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. So what's your favorite big game dish?
It's the life-altering sheep ribs on the fire after a 10-day hunt, and I think it would taste just as good after a 2-day, but there was nothing better. And every time I think about it and speak about it, it gives me goosebumps. So that's life-changing.
Right on. I kind of knew you were going to say that. This one I'm really curious about. So money is no object here. What's your dream hunt? And your wife totally approves. So we'll go with that statement right out of the gate. Money's no object. What's your all-time dream hunt?
This is going to seem strange, but this is more a recent thing than anything. I know that Summer Senior has a Marco Polo in his home, and again, this is 1 year into my hunting trip, I got to see that. Didn't know what it was, didn't know much about it, but I think that'd be a really cool trip. A really cool trip. So to be able to harvest something like that in a world that's completely unknown, much like it was for me at the beginning of my time hunting, would be pretty sweet. Bet you didn't think it was going to be that one.
Well, I won't say that's the one. I wasn't sure where you were going to go with it because you're in a position where you could probably do any of these hunts, and I had no idea. But the Marco Polo, it's on my list for sure one day.
Keep in mind, I still got to harvest a Sonchi, so I've tried
So
every year.
Yeah. So do I. Yeah, exactly. Somebody asked me what my dream hunt is. It's the one I do every August 1st so far for the last 9 years. So
yeah, exactly.
We'll get there. Okay, this one, it comes from a mutual acquaintance that you and I have, and the question is, how important is a really good haircut, Jess?
Oh golly. You know what? I learned as a younger guy. It's starting to turn gray now, but it always grows. For me, it grows back. So the importance of a haircut being great is not super important because it'll always grow back. So
God, yeah. You ever decide on a life in politics, you'll be good.
But that's how I really feel. Like I would dye my hair a certain color, knowing that it could be just go brown and gray again. So it doesn't. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, let's get a little more serious. So probably, one of the more important questions I want to ask you is, what's your best piece of advice for a new hunter just starting out? So let me phrase that: a new adult hunter who's going to embark on the same journey that you did. What would you say is the best piece of advice for them?
Find a Rich. Not a rich person. Find a buddy like Rich. I know that's tough. But I guess outside of that is starting with something as simple as a Facebook forum, asking a question on there, having half the people shred you and half the people give you advice is a way into at least something. But just find a way to get involved. And if you're able to give back in any way, it will come back to you tenfold. So I don't know what that looks, time, money, anything, just do something to give back and good things will happen, I think.
Right on. Yeah. And I think one of the things you said, which should stick with people, is say yes to everything if you can when you're trying to learn. And I think that applies to anything you want to learn, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's important. And if you have the time, you have the opportunity, don't say no. I always understand, and I know we've had these conversations on our sheep hunt sometimes, like 1 out of 4 people is going to get cancer. And there are 4 people on this trip. So whether it's next year or in 10 years, somebody's not doing this trip again. So I always think just get out there and try it. And if you need somebody to try with, go to an event. And I know it sounds intimidating, but start on a Facebook group if that's your comfort.
Or we have a platform that we know of that might not be a bad place either. We can always send them there.
God damn it. Yeah.
Dang. Well, you know what? Now what you have to do is you need to refer somebody to Spike Camp, and then you get an additional entry in our contest for the African safari, because that's where you need to go, Jess. You need to go to Africa at some point.
I will even buy an annual membership so they become a part of a conservation community to do that. So
there you go.
I will find somebody by the end of this week to buy an annual WSSBC membership and get them on.
All right. That is officially on record, my friend. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. Shoot.
Right on. Well, Jeff, before we go, let's plug your business, man. I know you probably don't need a ton of clients, but tell us what you do for a living and where you're at and how do people find you?
I think, so I'm a Remax agent. I've been selling real estate for over 15 years. I say this to a lot of people. I haven't worked a day in 15 years. I shake a lot of hands. I crush some beers, and sometimes I get a paycheck, which is awesome. But the biggest thing for the community that's done here is that I've started going to all these shows. I've started going and meeting people in other areas. And even on our whitetail trip, I met a guy in Golden who's a real estate agent. So if I ever need anybody or a client needs somebody in Gold or every community in British Columbia, I've probably made a relationship with an agent in that community. So I do try and bring value to the people that I'm working with by doing the relationship work for them, if that makes sense. Is that clear, Chuck?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody on the platform or listening to this podcast is in BC and they're looking for an honest referral, there's certainly somebody you can point them to, or probably multiple people.
Very comfortably, yeah. And I realized, sure, I work in the Lower Mainland, and I don't drive to Squamish, or I don't drive to Port Nelson, but I've met agents of like mind that work in those areas. So, yeah, thank you for allowing me to do that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No worries. No, you've been a big supporter of Spike Camp since day one, and you actually have an ad in our business directory. Thank you very much, and we're going to start building it around all of our good partners there. And you're certainly one of those guys that stepped right up right out of the gate, and we really appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
How do people find you, or do you want them to find you, social media wise?
I know Google's the world right now. Simple as my name, jessbaxter.com, or any of the trade shows that I try and get to. But yeah, it's easy on Google at jessbaxter.com. Yeah, or
Right on.
Instagram. I have to have 2 Instagram accounts because my wife does not allow me to post the stuff that we're talking about on one account. So I have to post it on the other one, which is the one that you've marketed, which is out there.
Right on. And you're going to be in Penticton, right? Who's coming with you? Is your buddy Rich coming?
Yeah. So Rich will be there, and Greg is going to join us this year. I tried to convince Skylar, but he's busy at the time. But it'll be the 3 of us for sure. And I know I mentioned, I'll keep that on. But it'll be the 3 of us for sure.
Cool. Well, we're going to have a booth there, so make sure you swing by and say hi. Looking forward to hanging out. We'll grab a beer at the show. And before we go, I just want to remind everybody about that. The Salute to Wild Sheep Society of BC Salute to Conservation and Mountain Hunting Expo is in Penticton at the Trade and Convention Center, Feb 20th to 22nd. There's a big trade show, tons of really good speakers. It's insane. I can't say it enough. It's just going to be an amazing show. The banquets are going to be awesome. There's all kinds of good stuff going on. So make sure you stop by. We have a booth. Spike Camp will be there. Also, shortly after that, our neighbors to the east, the Wild Sheep Foundation of Alberta, have their Bighorn Banquet in Red Deer. I think it's the 28th of February. So check out those shows, everybody. Get out there, support conservation, keep the sheep on the mountain. And thank you very much, everyone, for hanging out tonight, and start referring some people to Spike Camp. Let's go. Let's give away an African hunt. We're looking forward to that. Thank you, everybody.